The book reveals the corruption that has been endemic in Britain's biggest arms deals over the last 50 years. In particular, it tells the story of corruption in Britain's arms deals with Saudi Arabia, because the Saudi government has been the main customer of the British arms industry over the last half-century. The book takes the story right up to the present day by telling the story of the Serious Fraud Office investigation into BAE Systems, as well as the current Serious Fraud Office investigation into a deal with the Saudi Arabian National Guard. This deal is still ongoing and is being supervised by Britain's Ministry of Defence. The book also looks closely at the British government involvement in arms trade corruption and the response of the British government to international attempts to eradicate corruption in international trade. It explains why an arms trade corruption scandal in the United States led to a strong law against foreign bribery there in 1977, but why a similar scandal in Britain left Britain's ineffective anti-corruption laws intact until just 4 years ago. Firstly, in many countries, purchasing decisions are often made by an unaccountable political elite, so they're not deterred from asking for bribes. If you look at the 5 top arms importing countries in 2013, India, China, Pakistan, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, 3 of the 5 are authoritarian regimes, and none of the countries are known for impeccable business ethics. Secondly, many of the arms companies are very large and depend on winning major deals to maintain their position. That provides them with every incentive to pay bribes. Thirdly, there is no transparency in the international arms trade, as there is in markets for many other goods, for reasons of national security. This makes the prices of different weapon systems very difficult to compare, as each contract is secret, complex, and contains unique requirements. What that means is that it's very easy for companies to conceal bribes in the prices of the weapon systems, and so it's very easy for decision makers and their associates to demand them. Fourth, related to the issue of transparency, is the existence of an extensive offshore financial system, for example in countries like Switzerland or in the British Virgin Islands. What this means is that bribes are often transmitted by companies to decision makers using offshore entities. That makes bribery very difficult to detect, and it also makes it very difficult for law enforcement agencies to investigate. The last point is that historically, enforcement and law enforcement against bribery has been very weak. This is partly because of secrecy and partly because it's very difficult to investigate very powerful companies, people and their associates. And because they get away with corruption, obviously that encourages its continuation. The book shows for the first time how the British Aircraft Corporation, which is what BAE Systems was once called, secured its first ever deal in Saudi Arabia by paying very large commissions to influential figures through its business agent, Geoffrey Edwards. The source for this is the company's own documents. The book then looks at a number of deals in Iran, Lebanon, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, when the Ministry of Defence's own arms sales unit facilitated or approved the offer or payment of commissions to secure arms deals. The book also sets out in detail the Serious Fraud Office investigation of Al Yamama, Britain's biggest ever arms deal, including how BAE funded the lavish lifestyle of an influential Saudi prince. In Britain, the word corruption is used to describe a wide range of behaviour and situations. In my book, I look at one aspect of corruption, the payment of bribes by companies to secure arms contracts from other governments. In almost all countries, arms purchases are either financed by taxes paid by ordinary people or by natural resources, such as oil revenues. As companies which pay bribes conceal the bribes as part of the price of the deal, what happens in effect is that those receiving bribes are stealing part of the taxes or natural resources of the country, and the arms company is facilitating this process of theft. The costs can be very high, leading to much lower spending on education, health and other vital services for ordinary people in the country concerned. Many of the countries, of course, are much poorer than Britain. Corruption at the top also sets the tone for everyone else. It encourages or legitimises the everyday abuse of power by lower and mid-level officials in their interactions with ordinary citizens. This has profound and malign everyday impacts on the lives of ordinary people around the world. Corruption is obviously a highly controversial topic, and so to be credible, any history of it has to be based on the best information available. So I decided not to be reliant on sources of information that were second-hand, such as media reports or memoirs. I decided to only use documents from government sources, legal proceedings, or companies that were involved, as these are by far the most reliable sources. I decided also to focus on countries which were major customers of the British arms industry and which had a reputation for corrupt business dealings. That meant I looked quite closely at countries such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, as well as others such as Nigeria, Kuwait, and Lebanon. There are some revelations in the book that were not in the public domain before. I'll just mention the ones relating to Saudi Arabia, which are in chapters 3 and 5. In a nutshell, they show that the Ministry of Defence approved commissions for the company of the now deceased brother-in-law of the current King of Saudi Arabia, Abdullah, and that one of the brothers of the former Defence Minister, Crown Prince Sultan, who died only a few years ago, once sued a British arms company in the High Court over an unpaid commission on an arms deal. Well, firstly, the factors which make foreign bribery, including the arms trade, likely are still with us. There are large contracts available overseas, corrupt and or undemocratic governments in many countries, an offshore system to conceal corrupt dealings, and many very clever and expensive lawyers and accountants prepared to facilitate dubious practice. The good news is that a tough new Bribery Act was passed by Parliament in 2010, replacing the old ineffective laws. However, so far there has been no conviction of anyone under the Act for foreign bribery. Until the prosecuting authorities show that they can make convictions stick, then companies won't fear the new Bribery Act. Currently, the Serious Fraud Office is investigating a big arms deal with Saudi Arabia known as Samcom, as well as the company Rolls-Royce, and it'll be very interesting to see what the outcome is. In many other respects, little has changed. The British establishment are very keen to brush the whole issue under the carpet. It has recently come to light that the Ministry of Defence, which directly supervises Britain's big deals with Saudi Arabia, has failed to put in place any procedures that have any chance at all of preventing a recurrence of the controversial practices that led to the Serious Fraud Office investigation of the Al Yamama arms deal. There are a number of civil society organisations in Britain that are very concerned about the arms trade and wish to see action taken against it. To be effective, these groups generally need two things: money to finance and expand their activities, and people to help them expand their campaigns. Ultimately, if decision makers do not feel there is a groundswell of opinion about what is going on at the moment, they will not be inclined to change course. Unfortunately, the vested interests involved are extremely strong, and so the involvement of many more people and more money is needed for campaigns to try and reduce and control the arms trade. I personally, for some years, have been very active in the campaign against arms trade, which focuses on British government support for the arms trade and directly challenges the influence of the huge vested interests, including highlighting the very dubious history of Britain's arms deals with Saudi Arabia. The focus of the other groups, such as Amnesty and Oxfam, which are household names, and Safer World, has been on the Arms Trade Treaty, which was negotiated in New York in 2013.